Hi friends, welcome to the Safe Path Veterinary Services. Last time we have discussed about the physiology introduction of the physiology of estrous cycle. In this video we are going to discuss about the follicular phase of the estrous cycle. The major events that take place during the follicular phase of the estrous cycle include the elevated level of the gonadotropin that are released from the anterior lobe of the pituitary that include FSH and LH, and the follicular growth and preparation for the ovulation of the Graafian follicle, sexual receptivity of the reproductive tract, and the ovulation of the Graafian follicle. There are some you can say hormones that are involved in the estrous cycle, and these include the gonadotropin releasing hormone GnRH, luteinizing hormone LH, follicular stimulating hormone FSH, and estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, inhibin, PGF2 alpha. If we talk about the GnRH, that is a glycoprotein gonadotropin releasing hormone that is released from the hypothalamus that act on the gonadotrophs of the anterior lobe of the pituitary and cause the release of FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary. Luteinizing hormone, that's the glycoprotein that is produced as a result of the action of GnRH on the gonadotrophs of the anterior pituitary, and it is released from the anterior pituitary that act on the ovarian cells, theca internal cells, and the luteal cells, and it causes the ovulation, formation of the corpus luteum, and secretion of the progesterone. The FSH that is also secreted as a result of the action of GnRH on the anterior lobe of the pituitary, and it is also secrete. It also acts on the ovarian cells, but these cells are the granulosa cells. The follicular development and the synthesis of the estradiol that take place as a result of the action of the FSH on the granulosa cells. If we talk about the estradiol, that's a steroid that is produced from the granulosal cells of the ovary, ovarian follicle, and the placenta, and it acts on the hypothalamus and the reproductive tract and the mammary gland and causes the sexual receptivity, release of GnRH, secretory activity of reproductive tract, and uterine motility. Progesterone, that is also steroid that is released from the corpus luteum and the placenta, that prepares the endometrium of the uterus and mammary gland, myometrium, and hypothalamus, and it also inhibits the GnRH secretion, promotes the maintenance of the pregnant. It also inhibits the GnRH secretion, promotes the maintenance of pregnancy, and involved in the myometrial contractions, inhibits the reproductive behavior. The testosterone, that is also steroid that is released from the theca internal cells in the female, and the act on the granulosa cells and the brain, and act as substrate for the estradiol synthesis. And inhibin, that is also glycoprotein that is also secreted from the granulosa cells, and it act on the gonadotrophs of the anterior pituitary and causes the inhibits of the FSH. PGF2 alpha, that's the fatty acid that is released from the endometrium of the uterus and cause the corpus luteum, myometrium, and the myometrium of the uterus. It causes the luteolysis and the ovulation. Act on the corpus luteum, cause the ovulation, and also myometrium of the uterus. If we talk about the primary steps that leading to the pre-ovulatory LH surge, when the P4 level declines due to luteolysis at the end of one estrous cycle, it you can say sends signal to the hypothalamus. Then the hypothalamus as a result starts this increased secretion of the GnRH. This increased secretion of GnRH causes the secretion of the FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary, and these FSH and LH that cause the proestrous follicular development. These developing follicle that cause the release of the inhibin and estradiol. The inhibin decrease has a negative feedback mechanism on the FSH and cause the decline in the level of FSH. The estradiol that increase the secretion of LH and has a positive feedback mechanism. When the estradiol reaches a threshold level, that cause the pre-ovulatory surge of the LH and leading to the ovulation of the Graafian follicle. There are two centers in the hypothalamus that control the GnRH secretion, the tonic center and the surge center. The tonic center that responds to the low level of the P4 at the you can say end of the estrous cycle. This causes this basal secretion of the GnRH. It consists of two nuclei, the ventromedial nucleus and the arcuate nucleus. The surge center that that responds to the E2 level that also secretes the basal level of GnRH, but it is responsible for the pre-ovulatory surge of the GnRH. It includes the three nucleus that are the preoptic nucleus, suprachiasmatic nucleus, and anterior hypothalamic area. The tonic and surge center in the hypothalamus control GnRH release. The surge center responds dramatically to the high blood concentration of estradiol. GnRH release from the tonic center appear to be spontaneous but is influenced by the progesterone. GnRH release from the surge center is controlled by high estrogen accompanied by the low progesterone level. In this picture, you can see the relationship between the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the ovary during the follicular phase. You can see in this picture when there is the decline in the level of the P4, then the hypothalamus start the GnRH secretion. This GnRH you can say causes the release of the FSH from the anterior lobe of the pituitary and LH. This FSH and LH causes the follicular development, and this developing follicle release two factors, that is the inhibin and E2. The inhibin and E2 have a negative effect on the FSH. These E2 have a positive effect on the surge center E2. This causes the increased level of the GnRH that causes the increased level of the LH. That LH continues to increase and the follicular continues to become dominant as a result of the pre-ovulatory LH surge due to the threshold level of the E2 that causes the ovulation of the Graafian follicle. In this, you can say the picture the GnRH surge and the tonic release of the GnRH are compared with the release of the water from a tap. You can say in the right side there is GnRH release in the tonic form, and in the left picture that is the pre-ovulatory GnRH surge. When we say about the follicular genesis, there is the continuous death and the development of the follicle during the you can say the estrous cycle. This development and the death of the follicle, that is overall termed as the dynamic of the you can say follicular genesis. The dynamics of the antral follicle consist of the recruitment, selection, dominance, and atresia. These are the steps that are involved in the dynamics of the antral follicle. In this picture, you can see here at the start, when there is a low level of the there is high level of FSH and low LH level and no inhibit and no estradiol, then the follicular group is you can say recruited for the development, the start development. Next, when the as the FSH level declines, there is only one or a group of follicle, one follicle in the case of the cat, in the case of mare and a cow, but a group of follicle you can say in the case of the dog and cat, that continues there to become dominant, that are selected to become dominant because of the high level of the E2 secretion from them and high response to the FSH and LH. The other you can say follicle that continue to become the atretic. In the next phase, when these follicle that are selected to become dominant, that continues to release E2 and you can say that inhibin, and as a result they attract the blood supply toward themselves, or the blood supply is shifted toward them, and the different hormone, due to different hormone, and these you can say that also in this phase also some follicle you can say apply the dominance effect on some other nuclei, some other follicle, and these follicle also become atretic. There are only few follicles in the case of the dog and cat, and one follicle in the case of cow and mare that become dominant in the next phase under the action of the high level of the E2 and the high level of the you can say LH that become dominant, and as a result of the high level of LH at the end, the Graafian follicle or the tertiary follicle that ovulate. In this picture, you can say in the pro-estrus when hormonal change during the follicular phase. In the pro-estrus, when there is decline in the level of P4, the LH and FSH start to increase, and as a result of the development of the follicle, the E2 also increase. Just in the estrus, when there is a high level of the E2 is at the peak, and the LH is secretion, LH peak and LH surge is also secreted, that results in the ovulation at the end of the estrus. In this picture, you can see here are the recruitment of a group of follicle. That some of them become dominant and some of them become atretic. They continues to increase E2. The selected follicle to become dominant that also produce E2. Some of them also undergo the process of atresia due to the dominance effect of the some follicle, and some continue to grow and become dominant follicle. The dominant follicle, one of the dominant follicle is selected, and that causes the ovulation is caused in it, and the other one is become atretic. If we talk about the follicular waves during the cycle of the estrus, these follicular waves continue during the estrus cycle, you can say during the whole estrous cycle. In this picture, you can say in the meta estrous, there is the recruitment of the follicle that become selected, and one of the follicle become dominant. But due to the P4 effect, this dominant follicle become atretic. In the diestress and the startup proestrus, some follicles are also the follicular wave is also present. The follicle are recruited and some become atretic and some are selected and one become dominant. The dominant follicle also become atretic due to the P4 effect. In the and you can say in the proestrus, that is the some follicle become recruited and some become atretic and some continues to be selected, and one of the follicle become dominant, that ovulate, because here the luteal lysis had occurred, and the you can say suppression, you can say the atretic effect of P4 is terminated. Due to this effect, the ovulation take place in the estrus of the dominant follicle. The dynamics of the antral follicle include the recruitment, selection, dominance, atresia. You can see you have studied that the atresia occurs continuously throughout the follicular genesis. In the recruitment phase, there is high FSH level and the low LH and no inhibin, no estradiol. When the follicle are selected, in the condition when the FSH level declines and moderate LH level is increased and low inhibin level. When the follicle becomes dominant, the FSH level is also low and the LH level is very high, and inhibin level is also high, that is pushing a negative feedback mechanism on the level of FSH. Atresia, that is degeneration of follicle that continues due to the dominant effect of the other follicles. In this picture, you can see here the comparative effect of the FSH, LH, and E2 level on the recruitment, selection, dominance. In the recruitment phase, you can see here the high level of FSH, low level of LH, and low level of E2 that causes the recruitment of follicle. Next, when the E2 level increases due to the increased level of the E2 from the you can say developing follicle, that causes the selection of the follicle, and FSH level declines due to inhibin secretion, and the LH level increased due to the increased E2 level. Next, when the E2 level continues to increase and FSH level continues to decrease and LH level also continues to increase, that causes an ovarian follicle to become dominant from one of the selected follicle. There is a mechanism for the secretion of estradiol that has an effect on the FSH and LH. As the pituitary gland release LH and FSH, the LH act on the theca cell and causes the cholesterol conversion into androgen testosterone, and this testosterone is taken in by the granulosa cell and is converted into estradiol. The granulosa cell also secrete inhibin. The inhibin and the estradiol have a negative feedback mechanism on the FSH, and the estradiol has a positive feedback on the you can say LH. It has a negative feedback mechanism on the FSH. In this picture, you can see here the two cell two gonadotropin theory, and that is the and the when the LH act on the receptor on the thecal cell, that causes the cholesterol the conversion into testosterone. And testosterone is taken up by the granulosa cell, and the action of FSH that converts the testosterone into estradiol. This picture is also the you can say the interpretation of the two cell two gonadotropin theory, the conversion of cholesterol into pregnenolone and the progesterone and androstenedione and testosterone. In the granulosa cell, the conversion of androstenedione and testosterone into estrone and estradiol, and that is the two forms of the estrogen. That is the picture is also a depiction of the two cell two gonadotropin theory. The estrogen that is produced as a result of two cell two gonadotropin theory under the action of the developing follicle, that causes increased blood flow toward the reproductive tract, genital swelling, changes in the tissue electrical conductivity, leukocytosis, increased mucosal secretion, elevated myometrial tone, and initiation of the uterine growth. The estrogen that is secreted into blood from the you can say developing follicle, that goes to brain and causes the lordosis, mating posture and phonation and physical activity, and in the case of the reproductive tract, that causes the increased blood flow, edema of the tissue of the reproductive tract, secretion of the mucus and leukocytosis, smooth muscle motility and growth of the uterine gland. That is actually the preparation of the reproductive tract for the receptivity. Here is the ovarian events that are caused by pre-ovulatory LSR that leads to the ovulation. Pre-ovulatory LSR causes the increased PGE2 level, PGF2 alpha, and shift from the estrogen to the P4 in the dominant follicle. The PGE2 level causes the increased blood flow. PGF2 alpha causes the contraction of ovarian follicle. This whole the blood flow, increased blood flow causes the edema. The edema and the contraction of ovarian smooth muscle that increases the pressure within the follicle, and as a result, the follicle bursts and the ovulation takes place. The PGF2 alpha also releases the lysosomal enzymes, and the under the increased P4 level from the dominant follicle that releases the collagenase enzyme. These enzymes collectively weaken the wall of the follicle and are also involved in the ovulation. As a whole, if we talk the PGE2, the increased blood flow under the action of PGF2 alpha, the smooth muscle contraction release of lysosomal enzyme, and the release of P4 from the dominant follicle, you can say that causes the release of collagenase. That whole act collectively to weaken the wall of the follicle and increase pressure and cause the burst of the ovarian follicle and release of the ovum from the follicle. That is all about the follicular phase of the estrous cycle. In next video we will talk about the luteal phase of the estrous cycle. Thank you very much.